Non, c'est 45. 44 et 44. Okay. So welcome to this talk about E4 migration. This is a common topic in Eclipse conference because Eclipse 4, as you know, is a new architecture, and usually people they don't know how to manage this, if they should stay on E3 or if they should migrate to E4. So I will try to explain you what are the what could be your strategy regarding your migration on E4. So I will not explain you all the technologies inside E4. There are already some talks about it. So maybe I will just remind some very simple things about it. I will try to explain you what could be your strategy, what kind of tooling you can use. And I will try to explain you some feedback I got with some of my customers. So there are about 50 slides, but don't worry about this. There is a couple of slides that I will not explain them in detail. It's just for your information. You can download this PDF presentation on the website of the conference. You go on the talk description, there is a PDF link. So you can upload it just now if you want to annotate it. My name is Olivier Prouveau, and I'm an Eclipse committer on Eclipse 4 tooling and on platform UI. And I'm located in Toulouse, and I provide training, consulting. I see some of you who has already attended my training. You can follow me on Twitter also. My objective for today is at least 20 followers for today. That would be cool. And I've got a website also. So this slide is a little bit heavy, but I try to put the different reasons that could justify to migrate to Eclipse 4. First of all, Eclipse 4 is the official architecture since 2012. So the runtime is used for now more than 4 years. And when you launch your Eclipse IDE, you launch the Eclipse 4.x runtime, even if it's still written with 3.x. So if you want the runtime with 4.x, you will get an application model. You will have the capability to write code with injection. Of course, it's possible with 3.x, but you have to add your additional libraries to do this. But with Eclipse 4, it's native in the code. There is an event broker, which is not so bad, and it will help you to send events very easily in the application. You can customize your application, the UI, with CSS and wanderers. The wanderers are objects that can wander some objects of your model. You have got spies. The spies are used just to display a specific technical information of the E4 platform, and it can be used also for your project. And of course, one of the reasons will be that your application will still be used and will still be developed for several years. If you have an application that is at the end of its life, maybe it's not useful to migrate. And if you migrate, you will probably have to change stuff inside your application and to reorganize it will be the moment to do this at the same moment, to refactor your application and to add tests, for instance. So of course, there are some prerequisites, and the most important one is this one about the team. You must be sure that you can manage the migration. And the second one is it's not funny it exists. You must be sure that people knows the application, how it works, because when you migrate, you must know how it works inside the application. So of course, you must also be aware about Eclipse 3 and Eclipse 4 stuff, and that would be better if you know how to migrate. sometimes I have people who call me to have some information, but there are some information about migration on the web, but it's not always, it's very different information, so that's difficult to find something in only one document. It's not really, it depends on project actually, that's the reason. And it would be better that people are involved in the migration process. I mean that all the teams should be involved in the migration process. For the prerequisites of your application, you must identify the features that you want to migrate. Maybe it's not necessary to migrate everything. When you start migration, you will say, okay, I will create an application model and I will put all my stuff inside. This is not the good practice because you will probably have a lot of 3.x code that it will not be compliant directly with the 4.x model. So the compatibility layer will do it for you. So you must be aware of this. Maybe you will not be able to migrate everything to E4. That's I would say, the ultimate step if you are on the pure E4 architecture for an existing application. How can you choose the features to migrate? It depends. It depends on the lifetime, and it depends, I would say, on their test ability. If you don't have test on the feature, that could be a good characteristic to check and say, okay, this component is not well tested. With E4, it will be probably easier to test because we have injection, we have less dependencies to the framework, so that can be easier to do. So this is maybe the main picture and the most important slide of this presentation. It summarizes what happens in an application with 3.x and 4.x components. Actually, you have a project here with 3.x UI plugins and 3.x core plugins. So when you launch this with the old 3.x runtime, okay, it runs, that's okay. If you change the runtime and you put the 4.x runtime, all these plugins will be analyzed by the compatibility layer. The compatibility layer is a set of plugins that will read a legacy model. This is the model of your application. So this is an internal model. You cannot change it. And this model is read internally, and all the extensions from UI and only from UI, from your 3.x application, will be transformed into the application model, and this model will be rendered by the runtime. So the goal of a 4.x runtime application, compliant, is to have an application model here that can be rendered live directly. So this is exactly what happens in your IDE. The IDE is composed of a lot of UI plugins today. With the JDT, for instance, the JDT UI is not migrated to 3.x, and I think it will not be migrated for a while. So all the extensions are transformed in the application model. So when you have an application model at the runtime, you can contribute to this model with two specific elements defined by the 4.x paradigm. It's a fragment or a processor. So with this, you can change the model. So the goal of the migration is this one. It's to take your 3.x UI plugins and to migrate them to fragments or processors. You have not to change the core plugins. The core plugins are compliant with 4.x. You don't have to care about this. So of course, you must be sure to have a clear separation between core and UI. So if you didn't do it, you are punished. And you have to change everything. And the last step, the ultimate step, is to migrate this plugin, which is, maybe you cannot see it exactly on this one, but this is the application plugin of RCP where you have your application classes and the advisors. So if you have migrated all the UI plugins, you can finish by this one and move, I would say, the minimal definition of your application in your own application model. So in this case, the legacy model is not used anymore, and you have your own application model, you will try to put it, to keep it very light, because the fragments that you have written before will be mixed to the live model. So this is the goal of a migration. So depending on your project, depending on the life cycle of components, maybe some plugins will stay in 3.x and you will keep the compatibility layer for a while, or maybe you will migrate some plugins that are concerned by E4, the E4 paradigm with injection, because you want to use injection. It's really more simple to use that. So that was a short introduction about the goals. For the compatibility layer, actually, if you want to launch your application, you must add these plugins in your launch configuration. If you launch your application and it works, you could say that it's migrated, I would say, automatically with these layers. But if you use the internal packages, it will not work. So this is one of the prerequisites. You must have only standard RCP code. So you can try it, you will say. But you will see, but in the new E4 runtime, the internal packages have been rewritten to change the model. So it will probably not work. So for the migration steps, if you have the core plugins, you have nothing to do. Just keep it like it. And if you have UI plugins, you must, so this is a very simple method I just apply when I am in my customers, because actually it's often the same, you have often the same steps to do. So the first step is to try to move the UI extensions to a fragment or processor. And then, of course, you will have to migrate the code that is regarding this migration. This, for instance, for a view, you have to migrate the code of the view. You will remove the history extensions. And then when everything is removed, you can remove the dependency to Org Eclipse UI. And if your plugin doesn't depend on Org Eclipse UI, you can say, OK, this plugin is done. It's 4.x. It's a 4.x plugin. That's OK. Of course, if you don't depend on the UI, you have to depend on gphase, because you need the UI, the SWT and gphase stuff. But OK, just go one step lower. And you will migrate the RCP main plugin, an advice to help you to migrate. When you migrate, you will see that it's not, I would say, you have to change your code several times. You will start to migrate to selection, for instance, but you are blocked because you need to migrate something else to continue the code. So to do this, good advice is to create an internal package in your plugin. For instance, you put an E4 name in the package name, and you move the code. You copy the code, the 3.x code, you copy it in the package. So this is a good way to keep the build process and not to create, and to avoid to create too many plugins just for E4 migration. So you create internal packages, and it's better if you have previously prepared your migration with package for views, package for preference pages, package for handlers, and so on. So that will be easier because you will see what you are moving. So when you copy the class, a good idea is also to put the E3 class as deprecated, and you can set an error on this, so you can see where you are in your migration. And when you will migrate, as I said, you will have to apply several steps. So not to avoid to forget the steps, you should comment with a //e3.e34, for instance, or whatever you want. But with this annotation in the code, you will always remind of what is pending in your migration. So that's important to do that, because when I migrate code, I must always stop. Oh, it's not ready. OK, I just put //e34, migrate selection later. And I can come back after on this one. And because the this comment, you can, with Java compiler task, you have a view for that, so that's easy to find the list of the tasks that you have to do. For the migration, you have several tooling also, and one of them is native in Eclipse 4. This is the Eclipse 4 spies. So the spy is a specific layer which defines the concept of spy. A spy is something that will display a specific information of your application. So by default, E4 is delivered with model spy, context spy, preference spy, and so on. But you can define your own spy for your application. If you have a network application, for instance, you can define your network spy to check the transfer or the data transfer. For a customer, I created a Mockito spy because we mocked objects for the test, and we created a Mockito spy in 1 hour. It's just included in the spy layer, so that's very cool. And the spies are displayed in a specific window, so it's detached of your application, and you can focus on your development or an application. So that's done for you. So to install the spies, they are not delivered in the Eclipse 4 install of the IDE. I will not detail all these steps, but you have the PDF to do this. But it will maybe migrated soon in the PDE for the next version. So you have on the update side, you have Eclipse for all spies, and you can put everything. When you want to display the spy, there are shortcuts, but since the Neon version, you have a Windows spy menu, which is added in your application. And this is a good example of how you can migrate your application, because if you open the spy plugin, you will see there is a model fragment that will contribute to the window menu, and that will add a spies menu here with only E4 concepts. And this content is computed with a dynamic menu contribution. This is a specific object of E4 model. So this is a good example, the spy plugin, which is the basement plugin for all other spies. There is an extension point inside, which is expecting a shortcut, the name of the spy, and the part. And when you define all your extensions of spies, it will be parsed, and this menu will be filled automatically. So if you want to start migration, this is a good entry point to understand how it works. Yes, and this is the spy window. So this is a detached window where you can have all the spies here, and you can open the spies. So this is a model spy where you can parse your model. So if you run your 3.x application on the 4.x runtime with a compatibility layer, if it works, that's fine. You should add the spies, and you open the model spy to check what happened in your model, how it has been translated to the model, to the application model. And actually, this runtime model is the goal you should achieve if you want to migrate all your application, because this is the model that is rendered. So this is a result of the compatibility layer and the future fragments that you will create. There is a tooling also. I wrote a tool for helping you to migrate, but I'm sorry in this tool. I think there is a bug, but I'm not sure. I must check it. This is delivered on GitHub, and this is a migration state view. This is a view that will display all the 3.x UI extensions with their deprecated features here. For instance, action set is deprecated for a while also, so it should not be used. Even if it's managed by the compatibility layer, you should not have action set in your application. And it works, you just open the window, you click on the project in your workspace, and it will create columns with statistics on the different extensions. So that's a good way to start to evaluate how many views, how many preference pages, how many wizards you have. That can be an entry point to evaluate this. If you have a lot of red information, it means that probably you have very out-of-date extension points. That's not good. If you do that on the JDT UI, everything is red. It's an action set. So, if you go on GitHub, if you want to also if you use it and you find that because someone used it and sent me a bug, so I'm not sure. It depends maybe on its configuration, but feel free to fill a bug on GitHub or an issue, or to send me an email about it. I created also an evaluation form on my website. So you can go on my website, prerequisites.com, and this is a form with just several questions that you should ask, that I ask when I go to a customer for migration. I ask him or on the phone this kind of question. And after this, I can give you a kind of trend for your application. Should you migrate or not? So this is a couple of questions. That's very, very quick. Yes, I forgot this. In Neon, you have 2 new templates. When you create a new plugin project, if you remember, there are templates for projects, for plugin projects. And I added 2 specific projects for E4. So this is the new view you will have with Neon. You had plugin with a view with 3.x. That was cool for you to have an example. So you have the same with handlers and views. But this is pure E4 plugins with fragments, with an example of commands and how you should define your command and your handlers and your menu contribution. And it uses a specific annotation, which is XPath, to connect your fragment to your model. So I will have another slide about it. But these fragments will work in any kind of application. Whatever the application, it can be an E4 application that you create from scratch with your application model, or it can be included in a compatibility application with the legacy model. So that's a good starting entry point also for learning how to migrate, to see how it has been defined. So if you have other ideas of example, I can create other templates like this. Just open a bug and I will try to do it. So just a couple of slides about fragment and processor. A fragment is, as it said, model fragment. This is a piece of model, and you can edit the fragment with the specific editor. So it's there is not a lot of code to define. Just to describe what you want to add in your model. And the processor is another way to contribute to the model, but using the code. So you will have to inject the model, the application model, and to change it at runtime. So creating model fragment is, I would say it's easy. Just you use a model fragment wizard, use a control and fragment, and you can extract a piece of a model. You can extract it into a fragment. So if you have an application model with some information, you can take for instance, perspective, and you can extract it in into a fragment. So there's a contextual menu on the application model editor. So usually you will contribute at the application level. So I will explain you how to do this. But in general, when you have a fragment, you must set the ID of the object in the application model where you want to connect your fragment. So you must know the ID of the object. And then on this object, for instance, if it's a window, you have several features. So features regarding the EMF definition. So this is a structural feature. So this is a composition in general. And you have to select this element of your object, so this field, and you will add a content. So I will show you an example of this here. So this is an example of fragment that you can find in a E4 plugin. In a model fragment, you can open, so I open only one contribution here. It's about menu contributions on the XPath. So this is the ID of the object. So this is very important. If you use XPath, You don't care of the ID. You mean, with this, you mean the root XML element of my application model. So it means this is the application model. In the application model, if you open the application model, you have a lot of different features. So this is a feature name. You can contribute on comments, you can contribute on handlers, on menu contributions, on part descriptors, on windows, on whatever you want. You know, or maybe you have 20 composition inside. So for this contribution, I will contribute. So this is exactly the fragment of the spy. So it will show you how to add the window and the spies menu inside. So I contribute to the menu contribution, and I add a window menu. So it will be added if it doesn't exist in your application. And I have a second menu contribution that will contribute with a spies menu. So if I click on this one, the element ID will be the window menu. So it will be put inside the window menu. And there is a dynamic contribution with a class bound to compute the content. So this is the general use case of the contribution. Sometimes you will maybe contribute on a specific ID. I will give you an example for perspectives, for instance. If you want to add a perspective in a fragment, you will have to contribute to the perspective stack. In this case, I would say it's better to always put the same name, the same ID for perspective stack, because there is only one perspective stack in your application. Or you could write an XPath expression here, but it's quite complicated to write because you can say how you, this is an XPath expression in an XML file, but it's not very handy to do. So maybe it's better to put the ID of your perspective stack. And perspective stack, you can set a common ID. You can take the same ID than the ID you have in your IDE, for instance, in your compatibility layer result. Okay, so the model fragment to be used and to be taken into account must be defined in an extension. So this is done for free. If you create a new model fragment, you will get an extension directly in your plugin XML file of your plugin. So that's okay. You just say the file of the fragment you want to contribute, and it will be merged in your live model application. So that was a fragment. It's a declaration. The other way is to use processors. Processors is a piece of code that will be executed and that will change the model. So to do that, you must also define an extension. But in this case, you must say this is a processor and you will put a class. And this class is an E4 class. So you can use injection, you can receive the application model, and you will usually use also a class, the model service. The model service is a class, an E4 class, that is used to create the object. This is a factory to create an object in the model. So this is actually, this code is the same for any kind of object you want to add in the model. It's always the same. You ask to the model service to create a model element with the class you want to create. For instance, here, I want to create an instance of command. And then you set some stuff on the command or on the object. And then you search for the place, the location where you should add this object. So a command in the application model must be added in the commands feature of the application. So the application is injected here in my method. So there must be an @execute annotation in front of the method. And so in the application, I can get the commands and I can add my command. So this is always the same code. If you want to add the perspective, you can get the perspective stack and you can say get children and add your perspective that you created with this code. So that's very cool to do. It means it's EMF code. So you don't have to search in all the, like in E3, in 3.x code, there was a lot of different APIs to do some basic stuff. And now this is always this kind of code that you will have to write. Okay. Some context concerns. I will let you see these slides if you are interested in migration. It's just little information about it. What I want to show you is only 2 slides about injection. These slides explain you how to manage a selection. So you just inject a selection. And one very important feature of E4 is that if the selection changes in the context, this method will be recalled, re-invoked automatically. You don't have to care about selection listeners, for instance, or whatever listener you want. You change something in the context. If this object has been injected in a method with an @inject annotation, this method will be recalled automatically. Don't have to care about it. So you will remove a lot of code of listeners. And the other slide, which is important, so there was a context spy also to explore this, but there was a lot of talk about it. The other slide important is this one, because when you will migrate your code, you will probably need to publish information in the E4 context. You have a Sui.x plugin, but Sui.x doesn't have context directly. So you can get the context using this code. This is, for instance, in the start of a plugin, you can get the workbench and get the iEclipse context with this method, getService. So the iEclipse context of the workbench of the application can be get like this, and then you can put a value in the context. With this, it means that if your plugin starts and put some information in the context, if you have other classes that are expecting a change of this value or are injecting this value, they will receive the value coming from the Sui.x world. So that this is a bridge to do, the code to do if you want to share information between Sui.x and 4.x. It's not easy to find, but you have the sample here. Okay, and yes, and this slide is important also because if you have mixed code with 3.x and 4.x, for those who have managed selection, you probably know this type, iSelection. The iSelection is the standard interface to manage selection in 3.x. But you will still have iSelection send in the framework. But I don't know if you have seen in the previous slide, but when you manage selection, you can manage with E4 directly the type, the object, the type of your business object directly. It's not an iSelection here. So if you write code, a migration code, you must write two methods if you are still in the mixed mode. The first one should receive the iSelection with injection, so the active selection iSelection. It will come for 3.x selection. And in this method, you must extract the object and call this method with the object model. And if you do that, your code will be compliant with 3.x and 4.x. And when you have removed all the 3.x stuff, you can remove the injected method receiving an iSelection. But you have to keep the two methods. That's important. So this is the part I will not detail. This is about how to migrate extensions. So for each extension, there is some rules to follow. For instance, if you want to migrate a view, you should add it. You should add some annotation in the code. You should bind in the model fragment on XPath descriptors. So this is the standard way to migrate a specific view. If you want to have the view in the show view menu, you should add a tag. How I got that, I just launched my application and I just explored the model spy. And I saw that the view is translated like this. So this is the same for perspectives, for commands, for handlers, for menu contribution. So this is a good entry point for you to start a migration, to use these slides. For wizards also, the wizards are only JFace, so they are fully compliant. Only the extension point is not available, but the code, you don't have to change the code. Or you can change it to use injection if you want, but it will be fully compliant. So there is an example of wizard, how you can, and how you can open the wizard with only JFace code, so that's not a problem to use it. Preference pages also. And to end this talk, there are some articles about migration in French, English, German, so there are a lot. And if you have any question, so it's now, I think, yes, it's time. Or you can meet me at my booth or in the conference. So this is not my boost for this year, that was last year or maybe 2 years ago. And of course you must evaluate the station. That would be cool because we get information from you and we can make a better presentation for next time. Okay, so thank you for attending. Maybe some question before? Is there some people involved in migration? Yes, Alain? About? Editors. Yes.